Welcome to the G3X podcast, where it's godgymgrind Unfiltered. This is episode 37 of the podcast. Super excited. Our special guest today being Anthony. Anthony, thank you so much for being here, man. How you feeling today?
Dude, I'm feeling absolutely incredible. How are we feeling?
Feeling super excited actually for today's episode. Looking forward to it. For the audience, Anthony and I, we've been trying to schedule a time and a day that works for us. And we've been back and forth. And finally, we were both able all right, we got it going. So here we are now, so super excited, truly. I met him through social media, actually, I saw his content of bodybuilding. He's a personal trainer, saw his fitness content, educational content, everything. Like, hey, I really love the content you're putting out there, man. I feel like you have an amazing story to share. Would you want to be on the podcast? And here we are now. So super excited, like I said. And Anthony, ultimately, let me not steal your thunder, though, for the audience who might not be aware of who you are. Feel free to introduce yourself, where you're from, what you do, and we take it from there, man, for sure.
Absolutely. So my name is Anthony, or on social media, AMG Training. I run a bodybuilding and lifestyle coaching business through social media. I went to school for exercise science, and I got all the certifications you could think of: NASM, CPT, CNC, PRT. If it had the T, I have the specialization. I coach full time. I love it to death. I've coached people to the stage. I've been on the stage myself, and that pretty much sums up everything. My life revolves around God and fitness.
I love it, man. No, it's truly awesome. Like I said, when I saw the comment, hey, I know we have some fun stories to share. So I love it, love it. And let's get into that, actually. I know people might be curious, before getting into the bodybuilding, the coaching aspect, because I know there's some cool stories there. But what sparked ultimately your interest, let's say, in fitness, into bodybuilding? What was that spark for you that then led you, yeah, as you said, mentioned getting all those certifications and everything else, but what was your main spark that got you into fitness initially?
Yeah, so honestly, I wish I had a better story to tell you. Long story short, I'm 5'8". I have no coordination. I suck at sports. So I was in my sophomore year high school gym class, and it was around the spring. And the gym teacher was like, "All right, we're gonna do a March Madness bracket for the month. You could do one of two things. You could either A, participate in the bracket for the entire month. We're gonna do a whole month of basketball, or for the next month, you can go to the weight room." And I'm like, forget that. I cannot play basketball. I'll at least try the weights. And I went, I had a great time, and I loved it. I loved how it felt. I loved the feeling of my first pump. I remember it like it was yesterday. So I talked to my dad that day, and he was like, "Why don't you start coming to the gym with me?" I did. Turns out I was pretty good at it. I was a pretty strong kid, had good shape, and that's kind of how the fitness stuff started.
Snap. There you go. There you go. I
Yeah,
love it. That's so cool. Who would have thought?
right?
All right. That's awesome. And then over time, okay, as you started training more and more, then I would say what then made you, or you tell me what came first? Was it you yourself competing into bodybuilding shows, or you know what? I want to get my certification to train people, or tell me about that journey. Okay. You started going to the gym, and then
Mhm.
we'll progress moving forward onwards there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I competed last year, but I've been working out for about 7 years. So it took me 6 years to get to the stage. And the reason is when I first started lifting, I had the biggest ego and I was very strong. I was a senior in high school. I could squat, deadlift 4 plates, bench 3 plates. Like as a senior in high school, I was like, all right, I'm the man. And because of that, I kept pushing, I kept doing more than I could handle, and I got hurt. My freshman year of college, I fractured my L4, L5 vertebrae. I tore the labrum in both my shoulders, and I developed tendinosis in both elbows. It's a little different from tendonitis. So instead of inflammation, the tendon actually starts to degrade. So I had all those
Wow.
all within a year. Not fun. And because of that, I lost essentially all of my muscle and gained a lot of weight. So pre injuries, I was like 170, very lean. I got up to 190, not lean at all. And I locked in. I was like, this is awful. I don't like feeling this way. And I just remember I took this one photo. It was sometime in November. And I looked at the photo. I'm like, this is horrible. Like, what happened to me? So I locked in. I lost 40 pounds in 4.5 months. And I was like, wow, I really have a knack for losing weight. I clearly know what I'm talking about. So I started looking into the certifications. I started looking into the side certifications. And I was already in school for exercise science. So I just finished school with that. But that's kind of how AMG training came to be, man.
I
Yeah.
love it. No, that's so cool. And we as here with G3X, we talk about that God gym grind aspect, especially that grind. Hey, life throws you challenges, but hey, keep pushing through, overcome them. You grow from it, you grow as a better person. Talk to me a little bit about then that, let's say during those injury moments, especially, because I'm pretty sure other people can relate that they've been through injuries too, set them back on their fitness journey. from a mental standpoint, then, like you said, you saw the picture, like, whoa, and you locked back in. But before that aspect, during all those injuries, what were any like self doubt, like, will I ever be able to lift weights again, or anything there that you kind of like struggled there mentally, and how'd you overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. So during that time period, I was in college and I was actually in a fraternity in college. And once that fitness aspect of my life went away, I unfortunately made the mistake of doubling down on that frat life. And it did not help any of my causes. I was drinking, I was going out, I was seeing people I shouldn't be seeing. And ultimately, I do it all again because it got me closer to God. And that's where the God portion of my journey really came from. In that dark place where I didn't have my physical health, I didn't have my mental health, I was a complete mess. It was through my faith that I was able to lock in, to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I came out stronger at the end of it, man.
That's beautiful. No, and I can relate to that too myself, because what initially sparked me in my interest in my fitness journey, kind of like a little like typical like heartbreak story, lock into the
Yeah.
gym. But during that heartbreak moment, at the same time, I was kind of separating myself from God. I had just finished college, maybe like a year or two that I had graduated from college, hanging out with, again, certain people that you shouldn't be hanging out with, this and that, and just
Yeah.
kind of like trying to find, let's say, pleasure or like a purpose in the world, let's say, and there was nothing there. And so during that emotional moment, it kind of like led me back to God, got me locked into the gym, like, hey, I don't want to be feeling sad, let me just lock in the gym, kind of release it through there. And then fast forward 2.5 years later, G3X is here, born on the podcast,
Hmm.
and that's so cool. So I could definitely relate to that aspect. I always like saying this quote from Steve Jobs, which maybe you've heard me say before, where it's like, you can't
Hmm.
connect the dots looking forward. You could only connect the dots looking backwards, which is like, hey, certain things happen in life, which doesn't make sense at the moment, but you look back at it after and you're like, hey, because of that, it got me here. Like you were saying, hey, like even if I would redo it out again because it got me to where I was. If you ask me the same, honestly, I would want to go through those same, let's say, pains or etc., because it ultimately pushed me to where I am at now. You know what I mean? So I totally can relate to you on that regards for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, talk to me a little bit then about, let's say, fitness journey, in the sense of, okay, how was you got back in, you locked back in, you recovered from your injuries, etc. How did you, let's say, adjust your training, your like, your workout split, because I know some people sometimes when they get injured and they come back, there's that fear, like, oh, I don't want to get hurt again. So like that holds them back from maybe going a little heavier on the weights or whatever the case may be. So how was your process on that?
Yeah, so I definitely toned back my volume above else. When I was in my ego lifting high school days, I was doing maybe 30 to 40 sets per workout twice a week for each muscle
Wow.
group. Like it was serious, serious overtraining. So when I came back, I think I went from like 16 sets of chest down to eight. I went from like 30 sets of back to like 12, 15. So that was huge for injuries. I spent about a year and a half in PT. So by the end of PT, I was very confident in my body,
Gotcha.
but I still took everything nice and slow. I haven't done a max rep attempt in maybe 4 years. I couldn't tell
There
you
you
any of
go.
my maxes right now.
There
So
you go. There you go. No, but I think that's clutch, because I've had some people in the past mention that too. Sometimes like they got injured and then it's kind of like it got their ego in check, where it's like, you know what, they went back on the weight or back on the volume and just kind of like took a little bit more at a I get at a more, let's say, smarter pace. I wouldn't say slower pace, but at a more smarter pace for sure. And then that like helped a lot. Now, going into then, let's say, now into some of your, let's say, like coaching training, because this is the part where I really want to get into, because a lot of the content, I love seeing the content, how, let's say, different misconceptions or misunderstandings people have certain like exercises, this and that. So I really wanted to get into that. For you initially, as like the first main question, what would you say would be one of the biggest misconceptions maybe people have about bodybuilding or physique athletes and so forth?
that it is physically hard. That is my biggest notion. I have coached over 50 something people, some of which to a stage. And what I've noticed is that when people set their mind to it, they're on it. Today, actually, one of my clients competed in her very first show. She
Oh,
got
wow.
first place in teens, second in novice, and third in open and debut, something like that.
Nice.
16 weeks, she was locked in. She willingly gave up her cheat meals. She was like, I want to do this. And in a 12, 16-week prep, she lost over 20 pounds, killed it. Now, is it difficult physically? Absolutely. Is it more difficult mentally? 100%. You look at people who maybe are overweight or underweight, and if they truly locked in for a year, their problems would be solved. They could fix it in a year, but it's the mental side that holds 95% of people back.
There you go. And that's so it's so crazy you mentioned that because literally the prior episode actually that I had before this one, which hasn't been posted yet at the time of this recording, it'll be posted
Mhm.
soon. But he was a friend of mine from college he was also a personal trainer. He competed in like 2 bodybuilding shows. That's exactly what we were literally talking about at one part of the episode where he's like, man, like physically, yeah, it's hard, but what's tough, man? He was literally like, it's the mind, the mentality behind it. Because there are days that you just feel mentally you're like exhausted or drained or this, and you don't want to, like, you got to do your cardio, but then you got to lift your weights and then this and that. And it's like, it's truly, it can be exhausting mentally more than anything else. And I was like, oh
100%.
snap, And for you especially as well, then now when it comes to, let's say, coaching people, training people as well. Let's focus a little bit on some of the fitness side before getting into some of the nutrition aspect too. Let's say fitness side. What would be something like maybe common mistakes? Let's say people
Okay,
who are
yeah.
just recently hiring a trainer for the first time or just want, like, what would you say are some frequent mistakes people make when it comes to like the physical training aspect of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to answer two parts of that question. In terms of like, for like you said, someone getting their first personal trainer, unless you have never been in a gym and don't know like form, personal trainers are kind of getting phased out. What I do is online coaching where I give you a training program, a meal program, and I don't need to sit and watch you do goblet squats. I trust that you're going to do the weight. So if you know how to lift, you really don't need a personal trainer. They're not going to be with you the other, 23 hours of a day.
Right.
In terms of people's training, what I see most people do wrong in the gym is exactly what I did wrong in the gym. They assume that they can force progressive overload and just leads to ego lifting. It leads to half reps, to injuries, to weights you can't handle. And I see it all the time, especially in commercial gyms where people will load up more weight that they can do and lift it with atrocious form. And I don't judge them. I feel bad because I know in their mind, they're like, okay, I need to go up 5 pounds. Like if I don't get this extra rep, I didn't progress. So that's what I would say the biggest training issue I see is.
And it comes to that too, let me focus because I remember when I first started too, and looking at some of my old videos because I would record myself, and I was like, oh look, I did, let's say, 6 plates on leg press, and then you look back at the video, you're like, yo, that form was trash. Like, what the
Yeah.
hell was that? How did I think that was cool or good or whatever,
Mhm.
But for those people, let's say maybe they themselves know they're ego lifting, and how would you say what would be your best way? I guess you could say to avoid it, like recording yourself to then see the form, or just like if you feel that you're just not controlling the weight, like what would be like those things to people to keep in mind that hey, if you're feeling this or doing this, there's a high chance you're probably ego lifting and like cut it back and do it right versus injuring yourself or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I would create a checklist. There's a few things I would do and make sure you're doing in your set. Are you able to, you don't have to pause on everything, but are you able to pause in the stretch and in the contraction? If you're doing lateral raises and you can't hold it at the top for a second, you're probably using too much weight. If you don't feel the muscle you're trying to working, if you're doing a bench press and it's all triceps and shoulders and you feel it in your upper traps and your back, probably using too much weight. Control is definitely the most important thing. I don't think you need to like get a good squeeze on every rep, but you should be able to feel the muscle you're trying to work and you should be able to pause the weight at the start and end range of the position.
Yeah. I feel like too, as well, from what I've seen, some of the most, and you tell me, I would say the commonly ones that people tend to like ego lift probably being like either leg press, squats, and maybe even the bench. I think those would be the top three main ones, I feel, or
Yes.
what would you say would be some of the most commonly, let's say, ego lifted exercises that you've seen?
I'm going to group them all into one category, anything free weight. Anything where you can generate momentum, people will generate momentum. You know what I mean? Those, those hip thrust lateral raises, those bicep curls that look like this. Anything that's free weight will most likely get cheated with a new lifter.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. And I would say, guys, also, yeah, definitely make sure you control movement. I think that's the most, like he was like Anthony was saying, definitely. If you're able to like control it, like either pause, rep, and this and that, then that means it's a good weight. And then now let's say follow-up question would be, and I know this varies per person, per style of training, but what would from your experience too, coaching people, training people, a good, let's say, rep range? I know there's always that big talk, if you watch Jeff Nippard videos, the science of
Of
powerlifting is like
course.
optimal rep ranges, etc. So just curious, what's your personal opinion on that? I know it varies per person, but just wanted to see your feedback on that too. Because, okay, let's say we fix ego lifting. Now the next thing would be like, okay, what are some good reps as well to like, build that muscle? Some say reach failure, others is like 1 to 3 reps close to failure, and it's ranges, but let me just
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on that.
Honestly, great question. I'm extremely opinionated when it comes to how you should execute your lifts. I see a lot of this new like ultra science based stuff where they're saying do like 2 to 3 reps and leave like 3 reps in the tank. And I'm just that is such bad advice, even if it's technically correct. So if you are a new lifter, you should never aim to leave reps in reserve because you just can't gauge that yet. You know what I mean? If I was training someone in person and I was like, all right, this is your 12 rep max, try to hit 10. They're not going to know how many reps they have in reserve. So I think if you're new to lifting, train hard. Just give it a good effort. Try to take it to failure because it probably won't be failure. In terms of a general rep range, I do believe in the stimulating reps model. So I would say 5 is the bottom. If you're doing like a 3-4 rep set and you're not a power lifter, lighten the weight, even if you can control it. 5 reps
Agreed.
is the cutoff. 12 is kind of like the upper limit. I think 5 to 12 is a good general range. A more practical range is 8 to 10. That's kind of the range where it's not, super cardiovascular, but you can control it. It's heavy enough to get a good stimulus. But it also depends on the muscle group. I wouldn't tell you to go do your 6 rep max on lateral raises or bicep curls. But if you're like, oh, I want to bench heavy today, I was like, okay, let's go 6 to 8 for your bench. So that's my take on rep ranges.
There you go. I like that. Yeah, and I agree with you there too as well because I follow along that same route. Let's say around 8 to 10. Sometimes I catch
Yeah.
myself doing maybe like 12 or 15. I'm like, okay, if I did 15, hey, I could go slightly heavier and then like do a little bit less, and then you kind of start like balancing that out. What's definitely helped me as well, which I'm pretty sure you could probably agree with, is like definitely tracking your workouts too over time. I use this app called it's called Strong or whatever, but it's
I
like,
use the same one,
oh yeah, oh
the
there you go.
blue
That's
app
so
with
cool.
the barbell on it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so cool. There you go. There you go. That's
Mhm.
epic. And so yeah, for me that's helped me because something is like, again, you have your main exercises that you do, but every so often, you switch it up and they're like, man, I haven't done this exercise in a while. Let me do it again. And you're like, what was the weight I hit last time? So
Yeah.
it's so clutch when you go through the app, search it. I know some people prefer like handwriting, others use their notes, whatever works for you. But I definitely know tracking workouts has definitely helped a lot too, and like just keeping progress and measuring progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for you yourself, then, like when with your clients too as well, what's your, let's say, any tips or advice for people? Maybe they struggle keeping track of their workouts or anything that you've seen that like, oh, look, this is some helpful tips that maybe people can remember to track their workouts or whatever the case may be.
So, in regards to tracking your workouts, you can never go wrong with a notes app. And I used to use a programming app for my clients where I'd give them their program, they would track their weights, I'd see it. And what most of them were telling me is that it was a nuisance where having to remember what you did for every single set. And you're training hard. Sometimes you forget to log it. Then you're halfway through the workout. It's like, oh, what did I do? The other thing is if they saw a decrease in performance. And
Mm.
performance is heavily dependent on sleep, your carbs, your hydration, your mood. All these things can affect it. So I would have clients that, maybe they hit 8 reps on a certain movement. Then they have a poor night's sleep and they forgot to eat before they trained. And now they hit 6 reps and now they're upset. They feel bad. So what I would do as a very minimalist approach is just write down the exercise in your notes app and your working weight. You don't have to include reps. Just, if you're bench pressing, okay, I've been doing my working sets with 185. 185 is now too easy. Okay, in my notes app, now it's 195, 205. That's a more practical way of tracking your lifts, I would say.
Okay, nice. That's cool. That's cool. I personally hadn't heard that approach, but that makes sense, especially for people who maybe find it a little bit like kind of like a nuisance or something. Like just hey, how much weight you did and what you did, and like that's it. Don't overcomplicate it. That's actually smart. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, let's say here, Anthony, also going into some of the diet part. I know this is also a
Yeah.
fun discussion for people. So let's focus it on both ways. Again, for some of the new beginner lifters and then like the more advanced lifters. But let's say on the beginner lifter for starting their fitness journey, just maybe learning about macros and carbs. What has been your experience? Again, some frequently, let's say, common mistakes that they tend to do, be it in foods, macros, whatever the case may be on that.
The biggest mistake for your fitness journey, whether it be gaining weight or losing weight, is not knowing what you are intaking. I have been tracking calories, tracking food for 7 years now. I cannot eyeball 6 ounces of protein. I can't. I will always be off by half an ounce, sometimes more or less. And what people don't realize is that let's say you're eating 3, 4 meals a day and you're 100, 200 calories off per meal. That doesn't sound like a lot. End of the day, worst case scenario, you're off by 800 calories. Imagine you think you're eating 2,000 calories. Why am I not losing weight? And you're eating close to 3,000 because you're trying to eyeball it. Always know what you're consuming. That is the biggest thing you should take away.
You hit the nail on the head so well there, because that was a mistake for myself when I started like tracking food. For me, the biggest mistake was, which sounds so dumb now every time I say it, it's like tracking like cooked versus uncooked food, right? Because I would
Yes.
weigh
Yeah.
all my, I would like actually when I would weigh all my food, because since I live with my family, my mom like already prepares food for the whole family. So when I came, it's already cooked. So then I would just weigh it always cooked. But then I would scan the, let's say the packaging on the, the QR code with my tracking app,
Yes. Yes.
and that's basis off of raw, like the rice. It was like I'm weighing cooked rice and it's based off of raw rice. So I'm here thinking I was eating like, oh wow, I ate a whole bunch of carbs, but it was like way less, because you know how it changes from cooked. And
Of
then
course.
eventually I'm like, well, that explains why I haven't been able to gain more weight. I'm thinking I'm eating 4,000 calories and I'm eating like half of that because everything was
Exactly.
being tracked wrong. And it was frustrating if you don't
Yeah.
know the problem, because you're like, yo, what am I doing wrong? Like, I just don't get it. Like, am I eating? Do I need to eat even more? Like, I can't eat, like, I'm already fed up with food. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
eat more. So that's so spot on there for sure. Also, for myself too, I would say, like, coming from a Hispanic background too, now how there's definitely those like certain like seasoning or sauce that sometimes you don't think about tracking, but like, hey, definitely track those things, because those things can really add up on you, especially for the fat part of it. It could
Yeah.
really sneak up and you're like, oh snap.
No, it adds up very fast. Sauces and condiments are extremely underrated. Same thing with another common one, coffee. People will add
Mm,
300 calories worth of additions into their calories and be like, oh, well, coffee 0 calories, so this is nothing. It adds up.
it adds up. No, it really truly does. I would also say too, let's say right now for yourself too, whenever you're find yourself, let's say, traveling, right? I think this is something for myself too that I still struggle with, have to like figure it out better. But let's say as you're traveling a lot, how do you go about, especially when you're prepping for a show? I think it applies even more
Yes.
for like bodybuilders, especially when they're prepping for a show. How do you keep that in track? You travel with your
Mhm.
own meal plans, you take your own like meal, like those little like prep meals, etc. Or how do you go about it to like keep yourself in check when you're traveling a lot and that sort too?
Yeah, so it depends. In prep, I don't travel. The last, I think it was 14 weeks of prep, I did not leave Long Island. That's where I'm from. I'm from New York. I didn't leave Long Island the last 14 weeks of prep. If you want to get into bodybuilding, it is a whole different animal than just regular dieting. And if you
Hmm.
want to be successful in the sport where everybody's giving 100%, you can't go off on a trip, in the middle of your prep. In terms of just like more realistic lifestyle stuff, if it's within driving distance, like right now, I'm in my house in Pennsylvania. We have a refrigerator here. So I just went to the supermarket and I stocked my fridge. If you're going to a hotel and you can't cook, that's a different story, especially if you're flying and you can't prep meals. So I'll say this: if you're going on a 3, 4 day trip, go have fun. Just be mindful, like 3 day. If you're getting your steps in and you're not stuffing your face at every meal, you'll be fine. Can prep food and it's a road trip, do it. If you have a fridge, go to a supermarket. But if you truly be in control of your food. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, sure. I recently was on a trip. It wasn't even like vacation. It was like a work trip. There was like three
Mm,
different cities that we were hitting up in California because it was like this like conference event from like a church I was like working with for. And so it was like back to back to back cities, like basically, in the morning, kind of like maybe some breakfast at the hotel if there was even time, but it was pretty much from like the venue back to the hotel to sleep. Next day, drive to the next city,
mm,
venue, come back home from so like almost the only time we would eat or when we had the time to eat was something like late, like 12 a.m., 1 a.m. And so the only thing that's open there is like junk food. It's like there's either
yes.
a Taco Bell or a McDonald's. And all of us were like, man, we don't want to eat this crap, but like whatever. It's like there's nothing else. What are we gonna go to
Yeah.
sleep without eating? So like there we go, went to a Taco Bar or like a Chick-fil-A. And over those like 3-4 days is like once your body gets so used to eating like let's say home cooked foods and that meals, you could definitely feel the difference, right? I'm pretty sure you can
Oh,
relate to
yeah.
when you eat like a lot of that, like
100%.
wow, how like you could just feel the difference. Your stomach kind of like just feels heavier and everything. But like you said, it's like, hey, YOLO. I'll get back on track once I'm back home and just continue the routine. It's not the end of the world and life moves on. You know what I mean? Like, don't beat yourself up for it either. Cause I know some people could be like, oh man, I'm like, nah, man, it's roll with the punches, right? Life's going to throw you different things. You adjust what you can, you control what you can't. Just roll with it. You're not going to die by eating Chick-fil-A 2 days in a row. Like, you just get back
Exactly.
on it for sure. Now, I would say if you take that as an excuse to continue slacking now, then
Yes.
now that's on you. Now that's on you.
Those things are only bad when it becomes a habit, you know?
Exactly, exactly. Something I know as well as again, kind of tying it back with the whole God Gym grind aspect is the fact of every decision, can definitely form habits where it's like, be mindful of what the decisions you're making. Cause I know I've talked with people too, how sometimes like for whatever reason, life throws in the way, they can't go for 1 day or 2 days, 3 days for whatever. But then that can lead to a week, which then leads to like 2 weeks, which then
Yeah.
leads to like 2 months. And next thing you know, like he just totally fell out. And you're like, hey, a little wake up call, get back to your grind. What happened, whatever happened. But like, don't I've been in conversation with people who are like, oh yeah, I used to go to the gym. I've been thinking about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what's to think about? Like, just sign up, go to Planet if you don't want to spend so much money or something. It's like
Yeah.
$10, $20. You spend $20 on going out with to go grab something to eat. A burger is like $20 nowadays. It's not even $10 or whatever. You go to Five Guys or wherever the hell, it's not even cheap anymore. It's like $20 and just go. Like, what's to
It's
think about? So it's
expensive
like,
for one meal, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it really is. It really is. And so it's like, hey, what's the thing about? Just go. And they're like, yeah, I've been thinking. I'm like, just go, do it, bro. Like, come as my guest then, and I'll just take you with me. Like, what's your excuse
Exactly.
then? And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's like, so you just don't want to go. You're being lazy. So it's
Yeah.
kind of funny those conversations.
Mhm.
But Anthony, also let me ask you the following. I've been loving here the nutrition. Now, let me ask you as well, from your experience as a coach, what was your, let's say, the why? Like, what made you have that, let's say, passion, hunger, or decision to become an online coach? And how has that journey been for you so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this. This is my life. I went to school for exercise science and nutrition. I have the certifications. I do it as a job. It's my biggest hobby. I love it. And it has given me so much and so many opportunities. I've met so many people. Now that I'm an online coach, I've worked with people all over the country. The girl that competed today from California. I've worked with people that have competed in Ohio, Illinois,
That's
Wyoming,
awesome.
all over. And the amount of experiences I've had through fitness is unreal. And like I said, I'm very religious. I know God is one of the three G's. One of the prayers I always say when praying about my business is that I'm able to give people the gift that fitness gave me. If I could positively impact people's lives where they are now confident in their body and loving their life the way fitness did that to me, that's all I can ask for.
That's beautiful. No, and I definitely, in that aspect, can relate to that too. Because for myself, for example, at least when it came to the podcast specifically, a lot of people afterwards are like, hey, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share like my story. I never had that opportunity or this and that. And like, you feel like a little bit of like, hey, it feels good in a sense, like, wait,
Yeah.
I help someone just get their story out there. Cause like, how many people have different stories to share and they maybe never had that opportunity to share it or help inspire or motivate others. So I see what you're saying. Like, hey, when you're helping people, there's definitely just a good feeling that you get from helping others. And I always like to say, as you were saying with that famous that Bible verse too, is like you reap what you sow. Where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you're helping all these people today now, and in the future it could be someone else helping you. So it's like kind of you pay it pays itself back at some point. It might not be the same person, but you help someone else. One day it's you helping someone, another time it's someone else helping you because you reciprocated that to someone else. The way I see it, you know what I mean? So it's like that
Absolutely.
aspect of just doing as much good as you can, helping as much as you can. And it's definitely a beautiful feeling where you've seen someone like maybe have some, I'm pretty sure you could relate to this with your clients, like they have some kind of a self-doubt or worry, and seeing that they stayed the course, and then like 3 months later said like, hey, hey Anthony, they're like, I hit my goal, or I did it, and
Mhm.
like I don't know, it's just like a cool feeling, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. It feels really good. It really does.
That's beautiful. And for yourself too, how have you been able to manage, again, I see your content that is both like, your fitness coaching related, your own, let's say your own fitness content, your own personal content, etc. How do you balance that aspect of, let's say, coach, online coach, content creator, let's say, working on your own fitness goals, your own bodybuilding shows, everything else you got going? How are you able to like keep that all in check in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am very blessed where my coaching does so well that it doesn't take a lot of time out of my week, and it pays well enough that I don't have to work like a 40-hour work week. So I am in a really good scenario. Like I have a part-time job. It's really for fun because I know personally I would feel lazy just sitting around on like a Thursday afternoon. So I work for fun, and when I have that much freedom with my schedule, it does make it very easy to make my content, to make my posts, to do the actual management of coaching. And I acknowledge that for other coaches or for other people who are up and coming in the field, they might not have the luxury of being able to work for fun or only work part time. Life has responsibilities, and it is definitely more difficult to manage when you're working a 40-hour work week. Maybe you have a family, etc.
Yeah, sure. No, definitely. I remember one time I had a guest too, myself. Is like, hey, we all have 24 hours, but we don't all have 24 hours. And I get her point
Yes.
where it's like, hey, yeah, we have the same time, but sometimes some people are managing so much more that it does get trickier. And,
Yeah,
fair.
100%.
And it's true. And it's true. And that's where I would say to people there too with time management, it's like ultimately focus then on what's important for you, like your main priorities, because your priorities are never necessarily going to match up with someone else's priorities. And just because I see it a lot in threads, especially on threads, on because I'm on threads a lot
Mhm.
too. I don't know if you like. So you see this constant thing that is like, oh, there's no excuse. Like it's basically this like concept of like, hey, if you didn't make time for the gym that day, then you're just being like lazy. Whereas
Mhm.
like, hey, there's probably more to that than just that statement that maybe they're not necessarily lazy. Maybe they're just, imagine you're a mom with 3 kids, one car, have to pick them all up. Then, as an example, like it could get tricky, but
Of course.
instead of going every day, you go 3 times a week. But that doesn't make that person lazy versus someone else who maybe goes 7 times. Just different lifestyles, different schedules. So I'm glad you mentioned that aspect of timing because it varies per person for sure, for sure. Would you say too, one thing that also got me intrigued there as well, in this whole world of like fitness influencers, let's say natty, not natty, all these different things going on for
Yeah.
yourself personally, how would you say you stay authentic to yourself? Whereas, like, in a way that you stay real to yourself, but in a sense, still like stand out on social media where, like, find new clients or bring in new followers, whatever the case may be, but still being like that real yourself, not losing yourself through social, if you get what I mean.
Absolutely. I create content. I am not a content creator. You've seen my posts. They're nothing fancy. I don't do the complicated edits. I don't do the marketing. I don't do any of that. All the clients that I generate are through referrals because I'm horrible at social media, but I'm a damn good coach. And when you get people results and you help people lose 30, 40 pounds, or you help people get to the stage, they tell their friends and family who then sign up, then they get their transformations. And it really does branch out, not to like pocket watch myself, but every time I post a transformation, I get 3 to 4 leads. And usually one or two of those leads signs up just because I deliver on my promise, but I'm not on social media advertising. So I don't really care who's natty or not. I don't really care to do those big fancy edits. I'm sure you've seen those like Eric Janicki videos where it's like the percentage of I don't
Yeah,
do any of
yeah.
that stuff. I share my opinions, and if you want results, you click the link in my bio. That's how I do things.
There you go. And you know what they say, word of mouth is like, you know what this is like, free marketing is the best marketing in a sense, because it's like word of mouth. Hey, you're not like paying anything. You're just like, what better, and it's true, what better form of reviews of like than like someone else tells someone else, and then they see the results as like there's not much more to like convince them like, hey, can you really help me? Like, hey, your friend lost X amount of pounds. You saw him. So clearly I can help you too. And I think that that's super, super cool. Would you say also, let's say too, anyone that maybe advice on this part, kind of more on that entrepreneurship, that grind concept specifically, what would you say if someone just recently starting out with their coaching? Maybe they just got their certifications, right?
Mhm.
They're just starting their coaching. So maybe they don't have any clients, they don't have any reviews.
Yeah.
Maybe the only story is their own fitness journey, their own transformation, but they don't have anyone else. Piece of advice or suggestion you have for them, maybe wanting to like grow their own coaching business as well?
Get your systems and your back end things in order first. A lot of people, they say, I want to be a coach. I'm going to be a fitness coach, but they don't know how they're going to get paid, how they're going to
Mm,
deliver a program, how they're going to make sure it's a legit business, not just people Venmoing you and, trusting their good word. So I know for myself, I have digital contracts in place. I have subscription systems. So once they put in their information based off, the payment option they plan, it charges automatically. I don't have to text them, hey, can you Venmo me? I have a very professional looking program. So for my meal plans example, it has their name, a disclaimer, instructions on weigh your food cooked, weigh it on a food scale. If you go off plan, let me know in the check-ins. So it has instructions. It has a breakdown of all the meals, the foods in them, the weight, the macros for each meal. Like if you think that people are just going to Venmo you hundreds of dollars so you can just tell them gym advice, you're not going to be a coach. So figure out how you want to do business. And once your business is in order, then coach.
that's solid. That's solid, because definitely, even myself, let's say through the clothing brand G3X and everything, is like, hey, it's one thing just having cool merch, but if you don't have a platform that can handle, let's say, the
Yeah.
fulfillment, the order management, the payment processing, it's a nightmare. I can tell you that much. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
So 100%, I think that's super solid advice to like have your structures, your systems in place, because then the acquisition of clients becomes much easier because everything else is already like streamline. There we go.
Yes.
Streamline. But yeah, no, spot on there. Spot on there. Now, as we're almost coming near to a close, Anthony, it's been super awesome having you. I do have a couple of more questions that I want to ask you for sure,
Yeah,
which one
please.
of them would be specifically when it comes to, let's say, the mindset and growth aspect. Maybe if any, let's say you can story that you can share of like a specific time in your journey of like a mental or even physical breakthrough that you had that like changed how you train or how you coach people.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish I had a more interesting story. I'm genuinely motivated by my love of the game. I love this stuff so much. So I always do whatever I can do to be successful in it. I don't have any crazy like eye-opening moments in terms of coaching. I started my coaching business 2 years ago and I've been full throttle since. So I wish I had something more interesting than that, but more of a faith eye opener. Once I realized that we may be the only Bible that someone else reads in their life. I started working not only to be successful in my business, but in my life, acting a certain way, not encouraging certain things. I don't drink, I don't go out, I don't do any of these things because I had that eye opener of if you're going to live a Christ like life and lead people to Christ, you got to lead by example.
Amen. No, powerful stuff there, and something myself too as well that I've like come to, because I was born in a Christian household, but just like anyone, like you start hanging out with certain people, college, especially during that college time from where it's like kind of like distancing myself fully from God and everything else, and then getting back into it, where sometimes you find yourself in a mindset of like, I don't care what people think, I'm gonna do me, which to a point, there's some I would say there's some validity in that. Like, hey, I don't really worry about what other people think, but it still matters what you post because does it align with what God wants you to post, right? And that was one part I lacked a lot when it came to like old content that I used to post or just things that I would say or do, where it's like, well, I
Mhm.
don't care what other people think, it's my life, but it wasn't aligned with what God was saying. So I'm so the fact that you hit that here is like, yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
people may never walk into a church, might never go to a church, and the only experience of, let's say, Christianity, of faith or whatever, could just be you, either your page, your interaction with you at that point in time. And just like you said, hey, actions speak louder than words, as we say. And it's like, hey, more than just saying, yeah, I believe in God, I'm a Christian or anything. Hopefully, and that's a, let's say, a litmus test for all of us listening to this episode of like, more
Mhm.
than just saying that, be sure that your actions live up to it, right? Because talk is cheap, but if you're truly like, let your actions speak for themselves, that hey, you're truly trying to live a godly life, reflect that Christ-like behavior you were saying. Certain behaviors we don't participate in because hey, that's just not the vibe we're going for, you know what I mean? That's just not the life we're going for. So totally glad
Yeah.
you mentioned that. Spot on there, Anthony, for
Yes.
sure. And my final question would be then, what's next for you, Anthony? Like, what's upcoming for you? Competition goals, any projects coming up? What's upcoming for you? What can we see moving
Absolutely.
forward on Anthony's page?
I have a lot of big things in the work. 2025 is going to be a crazy year. So I have coached 3 out of my 6 shows. I'm posting the other transformation today, but so far my 3 clients have accumulated 13 medals.
Wow.
They've all gotten first, second, and third in multiple of them for their categories. And that's only halfway. So I definitely want to coach. My goal is 20 plus medals for the year. Really, really get into the bodybuilding coaching. That's where the passion is. In terms of myself, right now, I'm trying to get shredded. I've
Okay.
been in the off season for a while, and the last time I prepped down, I was 145. So I'm hoping to get on stage around 160 this time around. So my clients are
Nice.
getting shredded. I'm getting shredded. So lots of shreds to come 2025. Of
Love it. I love it. I love it. That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. You guys heard that here
course.
first on the G3X podcast for sure. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Anthony, if the audience wanted to find you on social media, what platforms are you on? Where can they give you
Mhm.
a follow, support your journey, support everything that you got going on?
Like I said, I'm not a content creator. I don't do marketing. My one and only social media is AMG Training on Instagram. It's AMG_training. Give it a follow. Hit me up. Links in bio. The whole 9 yards. That's all the advertising you're gonna get from me.
For sure, guys. And those listening to this, that'll be on the description below, be it on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this. So, as always, every new episode goes up 10 a.m. on Friday Eastern Time. And as we like to say here, live that God Gym Grind lifestyle, put God first, hit the gym, and whatever life throws at you, grind it out. Until the next episode, everyone. Take care.
Amen.